In a bold statement that underscores the growing debate over human rights and migration policy, another prominent Labour figure has argued that Britain must reconsider its ties with the European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR, to address the escalating migrant crisis in the Channel. This issue is heating up as pressure mounts on Prime Minister Keir Starmer to take decisive action, and it's sparking some serious controversy. But here's where it gets tricky. How far should Britain go in redefining its relationship with international human rights frameworks? And what are the potential consequences for peace agreements like the Good Friday Agreement? Jack Straw, who served as Home Secretary under Tony Blair from 1997 to 2001, recently voiced concerns about how the ECHR is being applied today. He claims that the convention, and more importantly, its interpretation in modern legal cases, is being stretched far beyond what its drafters envisioned in the late 1940s and early 1950s. Speaking to the Financial Times, Straw explained that some lawyers are exploiting loopholes within the ECHR to block the deportation of migrants. There is absolutely no doubt, he said, that this instrument is now being used in ways that were never intended when it was first created. Straw, ironically, played a pivotal role in drafting the UK's 1998 Human Rights Act, which incorporated the ECHR into British law during Tony Blair's New Labour government. Yet now, decades later, he argues that the way courts interpret the obligation to take account of ECHR rulings has morphed into something closer to blindly follow, straying significantly from the original intent. This shift, according to Straw, wasn't anticipated when lawmakers debated incorporating human rights protections into domestic legislation back in the mid-1990s. Interestingly, Straw isn't alone in calling for change. David Blunkett, his successor as Home Secretary, has also suggested suspending Britain's membership in the ECHR temporarily to manage the surge of small boat crossings. For context, nearly 29,000 people have crossed the Channel in small vessels so far this year, an unprecedented number that includes 659 migrants arriving just this week. With such staggering figures, you can see why emotions run high. Instead of pursuing a full withdrawal from the ECHR, which Straw acknowledges would be a lengthy and complicated process, he proposes amending the Human Rights Act to clarify that British courts aren't obligated to defer to ECHR judgments. This compromise, he suggests, could offer a practical solution without severing ties entirely. However, not everyone agrees. Critics argue that distancing Britain from the ECHR risks aligning the country with regimes known for poor human rights records, like Russia and Belarus. Sir Keir Starmer, a former human rights lawyer himself, remains firmly opposed to leaving the ECHR, citing fears over jeopardizing key international treaties, including the Good Friday Agreement. In fact, Downing Street reiterated this stance yesterday, emphasizing that the ECHR forms a cornerstone of agreements related to trade, security, migration, and Northern Ireland's fragile peace. But here's where things get contentious. Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, has thrown down the gauntlet by proposing an ambitious plan to deport 600,000 asylum seekers if elected Prime Minister. His strategy? Withdraw from the ECHR, scrap the Human Rights Act, and replace it with a British Bill of Rights. Even more provocatively, Farage insists that the Good Friday Agreement could simply be renegotiated to remove references to the ECHR, a claim that has drawn sharp criticism. Northern Ireland Secretary Hilary Benn fired back, accusing Farage of having no idea about the implications of meddling with such a critical agreement. Benn emphasized that the ECHR is foundational to the 1998 Accord, which ended decades of violence in Northern Ireland. Altering or removing this pillar, he warned, would not only undermine peace, but also disrespect those who worked tirelessly to achieve it. Adding fuel to the fire, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch is reportedly set to endorse leaving the ECHR at her party's upcoming conference. Meanwhile, Graham Stringer became the first Labour MP last week to advocate outright withdrawal from the ECHR as a means to curb illegal crossings. As debates rage on, one thing is clear. The tension between upholding human rights and addressing practical challenges like border control shows no signs of easing. Could reforming Article 8, the right to private and family life, be part of the answer? Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is currently reviewing its use in migration cases, as several deportation attempts have been thwarted due to interpretations of this clause. So where do we go from here? Should Britain prioritize stricter immigration controls even if it means loosening ties with international human rights bodies? Or does protecting these principles outweigh short-term political pressures? It's a question worth pondering, and one that invites passionate responses. Do you agree with Jack Straw's call for reform, or do you side with those warning against tampering with established agreements? Share your thoughts below, because this conversation is far from over.